Hey, welcome back to the Spector Creative channel. I'm your host, Scott Toy Guru Neitlich, longtime veteran of working in the toy industry and collecting toys myself. And as you can tell from the images flying past your screen, today we're talking about toy stores. And while I adore mom and pop toy stores, and I always make it a point to go in and patronize them, I want to look back at the sort of chain toy stores we had in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, and the effect on the toy industry of essentially losing them. Now, there's several types of chain stores. There were things like FAO Schwarz, which was more of a destination or kind of a tourist store. There were multiple locations, although eventually all but the New York one were closed. And then things like KB were your mall chain store, where when you're, malling it up, you can stop by and pick up some toys. And then there's your mega toy store, your big box toy store, your toy store that is a giant store just selling toys. And the king of all of these was Toys R Us. Toys R Us lasted past all of them and became a staple in a lot of our childhoods. Now, I won't go too much into the history of Toys R Us. It was started by Charles Lazarus in the late 40s. Its first location was in Washington, but it eventually grew, and over the decades, it became not just a toy store, but part of our culture and childhood. This was my Toys R Us in the Tustin Marketplace in Orange County, California. Spent many a night waiting for Midnight Madnesses, for Star Wars figures, and going on toy runs at this location. Now it's a Nordstrom's rack, but anyway, that's unimportant. Of course, besides the local Toys R Us's, there was their flagship store in New York City in Times Square, which again, kind of like FAO Schwarz, was a destination store, and I always made sure I popped in whenever I was in New York. It was one of the fun things about New York toy fairs. I could go. And as I noted earlier, Toys R Us was the last toy store standing, as a lot of them closed up shop. They outlasted them, but thank you to Bain Capital, who saddled them with their existing debt, Toys R Us unfortunately closed. Toys R Us was very profitable in its final year. Thanks, Bain. Anyway, what made Toys R Us important to the toy industry was its buying power. And sometimes that comes from the number of doors that a retailer has. Doors are locations, the number of physical locations. They're called doors. So you refer to the fact that Toys R Us, at its peak, had close to 700 doors in the U.S. And, of course, there's fluctuated, but it did peak out at, less than 1,000. And while comparatively to things like big box stores like Walmart that have close to 5,000 doors in the U.S., or Target, which is currently at a smidgen under 2,000 doors in the U.S., Toys R Us had significantly fewer. But what it did have that these stores didn't was aisle space. It had just aisle after aisle after aisle of essentially one product. Well, they had baby product too, but toys. Of course, yeah, they sold some things that weren't toy product, but, especially before they combined with Kids R Us and Babies R Us, Toys R Us had so much aisle space. In fact, Toys R Us carried about 80% of the products made for the toy industry, whereas your typical big box store, your Meijer, Fred Meyer, Walmart, Target, they only carry about 20% of the total product made by the toy industry. So a lot of toy product existed purely because Toys R Us and other toy stores, like KB and Child's World before they folded, were able to carry them because they had just so much floor space that they could create not just a shopping experience, but a childhood experience. You could go to a Toys R Us, and going there wasn't just going shopping, it was a magical experience. They even had, their mascot. It's not like you're going to get this going to a big box store. I know, Target has Bullseye the dog, but it's not the same thing as Jeffrey the giraffe. Believe me, I have nothing against Bullseye. I love shopping at Target, and a lot of other big box stores too. I'm not anti-big box store, but what I want to talk about is the difference between a big box store and a toy store. So big box stores, like Target and Walmart, are the two biggest ones, they have departments. They have departments for lots of different things. Everything from audio, car care, to home, apparel, groceries. Walmart alone has over 100 different departments, and toys is one of them. And it's not, by far, the most important, most profitable, or the highest in what's called velocity, which means the number of sales that a department generates based on a weekly sales total and units sold. And most big box stores nowadays are also grocery stores, which means they're selling perishables, which means they have to have a different type of replenishment system for things that you have to buy on a weekly basis. Most people don't need to buy toys on a weekly basis. I mean, I know I do, I know you do, but most people aren't like us and don't require a new 6-inch figure every week in order to stay healthy. Most people need things like toilet paper every week. So let's compare and contrast your big box store and your toy store. And this is very important to what's happening in the toy industry right now with distribution and availability. So as a metaphor, think if you have a sports car, right? Great car for showing around town, going on dates, racing on the highway. Well, you wouldn't take this sports car into the woods and try to trudge through a stream or through the mud with it, because it's not designed for this. It's designed to be a sports car, whereas an off-road vehicle is designed to be an off-road vehicle. It's the same with toy stores versus big box stores. Things have a purpose. Things are designed for a purpose. And the big box store is not designed to be a toy store, the way Toys R Us is designed to be a toy store, with huge amounts of aisle space so that they can skew, as I said, 80% of the total product the toy industry makes. A big box store, its purpose is to help people with their weekly errands, which is why they have all those departments. Yes, you could pass the toy department, but you're going to be able to go to a big box store and check off multiple errands in one place. Some big box stores have groceries, banks, and pharmacies inside of them. Why? Because it's all part of helping customers with their weekly shopping list, not creating a toy store experience, which is what you got at things like Toys R Us, or you still get at some of the mom and pop stores. Yes, big box stores have toy aisles, but a toy aisle is not a toy store. Not just because they carry so much less, but their purpose. A toy aisle in a big box store is a favor. It's there as a convenience for customers who, during their weekly shopping, need to pick up a toy, most likely for a child's friend's birthday. That's the most gift-giving experience people encounter all year. Of course, Christmas and birthday come once a year. Or there's, of course, the shut-me-up gift, essentially a $5 item which can get a child to behave while on a shopping trip for errands when you're also buying toilet paper and apples and scented candles and that type of thing. So the toy aisle is not there to function as a replacement for the toy store. It's there to function as a favor for someone who has errands to run. And one of those errands might include picking up a gift for a child's friend. So the toy aisle's there so you can quickly, ideally on an end cap, grab something and go. It's not there to visit and have a giant experience. It's the whole couch bed thing. You're not quite getting a couch, not quite getting a bed, but you're getting something. It's great that big box stores have toy aisles, but a lot of the frustration that adult collectors have is they expect a big box store's toy aisle to both be a replacement for and act like a toy store. And no matter what you do, you can't train a toy aisle to act like a toy store, because big box stores are programmed to act a certain way and have to have a certain number of sales per peg per week, which is not something that toy stores have.
Why? Why was I programmed to feel pain?
A toy store functions very different. A toy aisle has to behave the same way every other aisle in a big box store does, with the number of units sold per week. It's there as a convenience, not as an experience. And it's a big reason why we do have some distribution issues, because we used to be able to distribute product to toy stores and toy aisles. Now, all we really have are toy aisles. The lack of a dedicated toy store really does hurt the toy industry, because we're getting fewer lines. The only lines being supported are those carried in the toy aisle. All right, I hope this sheds some light on the difference between a toy store and a toy aisle. If you have any other questions, leave them in the comments below, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for sharing this video, too. It helps the channel a lot. Spector out!